Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jan. Welcome, everybody, to this next live session, Building an AI-First Organization. Before we dive right into with our famous guest today, let's just take a look at a couple of things. So for those who don't know us yet, a quick introduction. We are 9x. You can find us at go9x.com. We are building your one-stop shop to learn AI and automation. We believe that AI and automation are the most important skills to learn right now as a business professional, and we're on a mission to bring these skills to you on the silver platter. We do this in a few ways. Firstly, to our YouTube channel, where we are streaming this live right now. We publish free AI and automation tutorials. We do some demos and also share news. We publish every week. It's free. So if you want to subscribe, we'll be dropping a link to our channel in the chat right now. Secondly, we also do this enablement through our live workshop like this one, the one that you're in now. We run this weekly, and next week's session will be on a very hot topic, vibe coding. So while there's a lot of excitement about the new way of developing software, it also has some potential limitation. Jan will be joined by Fred from Xano, who will show us a new approach that lets you vibe code for speed, and then also have all your critical business logic visualized in an easy to understand diagram. So if you're interested, we'll drop the link now in the chat so you can register for that next session. And finally, the approach that we have with AI or AI First program, which we run with companies like TravelPerk, where we help companies and organizations to transition towards not exactly the blueprint that Brandon will share with us today, but at least a first direction towards AI First operating model. So we start with what we call AI literacy, which is just bringing the basic of prompting to everybody in the organization, and then try to train a smaller group of future AI builder. If you're interested in hearing more about how we do this, feel free to use the link that Jan is going to drop in the chat to book a chat with us. All right, enough with the shameless promotion, on to the main event. So we have the chance today to have with us Brandon, Chief People Officer at Zapier. Brandon, thanks for joining us today. Before we dive into Zapier's AI transformation, can you tell us a bit more about your role as Chief People Officer at Zapier, what that means for a company that is essentially in the AI automation business?
You bet. Well, it sounds like from the chat, a bunch of folks know Zapier. A 14-year-old organization started as a no-code automation platform. Now with AI, there are a whole heap of additional ways that folks can build software and applications using Zapier with and without code. So we call Zapier these days an AI orchestration platform because you can connect whatever LLMs and applications you like and build interesting and useful things on top of it. I joined Zapier 4 years ago as our first Chief People Officer. And with AI in particular, it's been really clear to us that the AI opportunity is as much about talent, leadership, and culture as it is about models and tools. And we reflect that in so much of what we're going to talk about today. I can also share with you, I think, Piva, you probably know this already, but I'll share something with the group today. It's a preview. You're getting 24 hours advance notice on something we're going to announce tomorrow at Zapier, which is because of how essential talent and culture has been for our AI transformation journey. We are expanding my team's mission at Zapier to include officially driving the company's AI transformation and helping a lot of our customers do the same. So as of tomorrow, we'll announce that this role, the role that I have at Zapier today, will grow to become our Chief People and AI Transformation Officer. And we'll announce that tomorrow. But the most important thing isn't me or that title. It's that the people team at Zapier is being pulled right into the middle of the AI opportunity.
Awesome. And how does leading people strategy at an automation company shape your perspective on AI adoption?
Well, I would tell you that AI adoption or AI transformation, it's another business transformation. It's not the first one. It's not the last one. And so some of the success factors from prior transformations, whether it was globalizing a workforce or cloud computing, those ingredients are very similar, right? And they start and stop with leadership first and foremost, and then extend pretty quickly to talent and culture. Very hard to unlock like real durable benefits from any technology, including AI, without having a strong foundation within the organization. We'll talk about some specifics in our conversation today, but that's the number one way that my work on the people team informs my thinking about AI.
Awesome. Maybe before we dive into the AI transformation aspect of things, I'm curious because you said you've been at Zapier for over 4 years now. So it means that back in early 2023, when AI tools started exploding into mainstream, GPT-4 was released. What was happening inside Zapier? Like, was there any thought this could eventually disrupt the industry?
Oh, we knew it was going to disrupt the industry. We could see it. We could see it from a mile away. I mean, but if to your point, in March 2023, that was like 6 months after ChatGPT 3.5 exploded. And so at that point, we already had probably roughly a quarter of the company that had hands on keyboard, was using all the latest models and starting to think about how we could help our customers. And honestly, just take like a big step forward in achieving our mission, right? Zapier's mission today is the same as it was when we started. It's to make automation work for everyone. And now I think we can all see how AI can help us do that and do that for more people. So we could see that 2.5 years ago, but not the entire company wasn't there yet. And so, Pierre-Yves and Jan, you know this story, but in March of 2023, we declared a code red moment for the company. It was the first. It was the first in the company's history. It was a 12-year-old company almost at that point. And Wade and our leadership team said, "Hey, like this is going to disrupt automation as we know it. It's our opportunity to make sure that happens for the better, right? Disruption doesn't necessarily mean something negative. It just means something is changing. So we got to get our hands on it and help shape it." I would share with you though, that memo, that code red memo, not universally loved by the team at the time. I mean, even the title, right? Code red, right? It's like literally alarmist. And not everyone had the context at that point. And I'd be happy to share a little bit about how I reflect on that moment, 2.5 years later, if you're interested. But that couldn't help, just in the spirit of candor, tell you that everyone understood it at first, or that everyone liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear a bit, how you reflected on it, and how you think it impacted people, and maybe how you, and then also what did you do afterwards? Because I guess it wasn't just coding the code red. Then something had to happen. Can you walk us through
Yes.
that?
Yeah, I sure will. So first the reflection and then what we did. So
Yeah.
the reflection 2.5 years later is, I'm really glad that we did not wait for consensus or anything approaching consensus before we put that out in front of the team. And there are two reasons. One, consensus never comes. So you're waiting forever. And these days, like speed of learning, speed of execution, figuring out what AI means for the team, for the organization, for our customers, there's no time to waste. It's a big opportunity for all of our organizations. So that's reflection number one. Reflection number two is, it was actually the work of the weeks that followed that code red memo where people developed that like clarity and confidence around, what are we really talking about here? What does it mean for my job? What does it mean for me? What do I need to learn? What do I need to be doing? It's really hard, I find, for people to get clear on that in the absence of that type of clarity, starting with the leader of the organization themselves. And so, we took a pinchy moment, right? A pinchy week or two as a team by putting this out before we had anything approaching consensus. But it allowed us to do, to the second part of your question, a lot of things in rapid succession to get specific. So within 2 weeks of that code red moment, Zapier did a few things. First, we published our first AI use guidelines for the company. I'll come back to that in a minute. Two, we created 2 channels, Slack channels, and they still serve us well today. The first was a place where anyone could ask any question about AI, big, small, existential, it didn't matter. Any question, single place where we could all learn together. Now, importantly, we took a couple of our more advanced AI users, folks who had been really in the research with the models, and we asked them, hey, now part of your job is to get in that channel and make sure people get speedy, helpful answers to all of those questions. Which, by the way, from an engagement and meaning perspective, actually was a big deal for those folks. It feels good to be helpful, especially in an area where your teammates have a lot of questions and concerns at first. The second channel was one where people could share use cases and demos. Here's the thing I built. It's really useful. Here's the impact it's having. Here's the thing I built. It does not work. I need help, right? And so on and so forth. So again, those are, it's like, you could not get operationally simpler than that. Man, I think that's one of the big ideas with AI fluency and AI adoption is, the operational simplicity of some of these tactics, like setting up those 2 channels, is often not at all correlated with the impact they could have. And when you're getting started on this journey, it's really neat to look for specific things you can do with the team, which are very easy to implement, but can have outsized impact. And so the AI use guidelines plus those two channels are two examples. And then, as some folks may have heard over the last year or so, a lot of our organizations also have some version of like a hack week or a builder session when we put down the day-to-day for a minute and we think big about what's possible. And we get together with a few teammates and we try to prototype it. Well, Zapier does the same thing. And we repurposed our very next hack week to be an AI hack week. Every single person in the company participated. And we actually have a couple applications in production today, 2.5 years later at Zapier, that were inspired by projects from that first AI hack week. So those are 3 types of tactics that were really quick follows. The last thing I would say is, for organizations that haven't yet done their code red moment, my number one piece of advice is make sure that that code red moment is packaged with a few of these tactics. The fourth and last thing that we did that now I sometimes take for granted is that very same day, like we made sure every single person in the company had a enterprise grade LLM license. Okay. Right? We're asking folks to build. We don't want folks to wait 2 or 4 weeks to get the tools that are needed. Right? We want to seize the momentum of that call to action, from Wade, from our CEO. And so, make sure you have some substance within the call to action would be the last thing I think I would reflect on.
Awesome. And giving access to enterprise grade LLMs to everybody, I guess that had to be tightly linked with the publishing of the AI use guidelines that you mentioned in the first point. Can you share with us what these guidelines were at the time? I don't know if you have maybe something visual so that you can share. Feel free to share the screen if you want.
Oh, sure. Here. Well, I'll talk it out a little bit and then I can share my screen once we get going. Here we go. So one key thing about AI use guidelines, these are going to look a little different for each organization, but I think there's a principle around the design that's pretty helpful. Sometimes when people think about AI use guidelines, they think about it as like something that like constrains creativity, right? We're trying to like box people in. You don't do this, be careful, be careful, be careful. And by the way, like, yes, like we want people to be thoughtful in how they, experiment and deploy, LLM use cases. However, a great set of AI use guidelines plays to longstanding research on creativity. And a lot of us know this research, right? And the research says that guardrails, or imagine like a sandbox, right? When folks are asked to do something, especially something high ambiguity, but they have a clear sense from the organization of what those guardrails or the bounds of the sandbox are, it actually boosts creativity rather than limit it. It's actually the absence of any guardrails whatsoever, formal guardrails, that limits creativity. And the reason why is because in the absence of those formal boundaries, people make up their own, and their boundaries tend to be even tighter or more constrained, right? Because they're protecting downside. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get fired. Than the company's guidelines. So that's why it's so important. It doesn't sound like the most like interesting or novel thing to start with AI use guidelines, but if you're interested in providing clarity on how folks should build and maximizing creativity, it's one of the very first things that we should be doing. The last thing I would share with you, I'm going to show just a screen grab of these AI use guidelines. You can see here. There's nothing, in particular. The other thing about this too is that we like fed them into, we could call it a GPT or a gem or Glean or whatever you use, so that folks can like query it to ask follow-up questions, right? AI use guidelines can also get pretty long. And one of the superpowers of AI can be getting folks fast, helpful answers to their questions, which when you're trying to, make something big with a new technology, speed of execution, speed of learning, really helpful. The last thing I would say, no set of AI use guidelines can account for all of the forms of judgment that the team needs to have when they're building with AI. And so within these guidelines, there are a couple principles that I think are at least as important as any of the rules. And I'll give you a specific example. And I credit to Brian Helmig, our CTO, for this one. Brian says, something really wise, I think. He says that with AI, you can delegate a bunch of the work, but you cannot delegate the accountability. So I'll say that again. With AI, you can delegate a bunch of the work. You cannot delegate the accountability. Now, you stop and think about the power of every single person in your organization holding a couple of principles like that in their mind really helps fill in all the natural gaps within a set of AI use guidelines, which tend to be more rules-based.
Super interesting. And how much of that do you attribute to the success of what you've been doing? And by that I mean providing guidelines rather than just asking people to figure it out. Just giving this frame. Did you feel like it gave people the freedom to explore and also maybe a sense of safety?
Yes, which I think is important. I mean, anyone who is paying any attention knows that you can do some pretty powerful things with AI. And in particular, a lot of the value comes not just from the LLMs, it comes from the knowledge or the data that the LLM is pointed at. And when you talk about that, now we're talking about our employee data. If we're talking about like a talent use case, or we're talking about customer data, it's sensitive data. And by the way, though, I would say that's not new either. There's so many existing frameworks or ways of thinking that we have in our organizations that we can pull over and apply to our AI work, right? I remember, in my last software company all these years ago, that's when GDPR and CCPA, came onto the scene, and folks started thinking like much more intelligently about data privacy, data access, and things of that nature. And those principles are very useful when thinking about how to use data with AI. And so all that to say, yes, I think being clear is incredibly important. I would just encourage teams not to start from scratch. There are existing policies, frameworks, and principles within our organizations that we can extend into AI use guidelines.
Awesome. And then, so you mentioned this AI Hack Week. Do you have examples of what came out of this first week and potential product or solution that were built?
You bet. You can see some examples on this particular slide. Again, importantly, this is another place where I really admire how the Zapier leadership team was pretty clear and uncompromising in what was needed. The Hack Weeks we had done in the years before this AI Hack Week, were largely the work of our build team, engineers, designers, product managers, data scientists, coming together. Pretty light participation from other areas like finance or HR or customer support. Well, not for this one. This was an all-in together moment. Every single team, every single person was building and sharing, demoing what they had prototyped. And so you can see interesting examples here. There are things from all over the company. Now, one of these experiments, we had, and you can actually see literally the names of the people who contributed to this on this slide. You had 4 folks from Zapier's customer support team. These are not engineers or technical experts, but these are folks who really understand the craft of getting speedy, helpful answers to customers. They know that work. They also know some of the pain points of the way we had been doing it at the time. And one of the pain points is, with a product like Zapier, powerful product, like, sometimes people have a question and there's not an obvious answer, right? You got to like really get in there. The tickets can get long. And then as we're providing global support, right, tickets can get handed off to someone in a different time zone as you move around the sun. And for all those reasons, it can take a rep, or it did take a rep at the time, sometimes a while to just figure out what is going on, right? Working through all the tickets. And they were like, hey, like one of Gen AI's superpowers is synthesizing information. So why don't we put that to work? So during the Hack Week, they prototyped, and you can see the name of it right here. They prototyped what they called at the time Zen GPT. And what Zen GPT did is it summarized Zapier customer support tickets in a way that was very custom to Zapier's product, our support knowledge base, and so on. And this was 2.5 years ago. Like, technology's come a long way since then. This was one of the top Hack Week projects, and there were a couple of reasons why. One, it was anchored on a well-understood problem. 2, that problem was very measurable. Very measurable, right? Customer support, classically, there's usually a speed metric, like on average, how quickly do you answer a customer problem? And there's almost always a quality metric, which is, how well, from the customer's perspective, did you solve their problem? Same thing was true at Zapier. So really clear problem space that the folks were experimenting in, very measurable. So you can kind of, measure pretty quickly the impact of something like this. Well, it turns out it's pretty helpful. And so today, Zen GPT is a product that's fully deployed to our global customer support team. It's called Support Sidekick. It's still built and maintained by the customer support team. And this is one of the ways that over the last couple of years, the support team has been able to decrease the number of minutes it takes to answer a customer question by over 50%. And the CSAT, or the customer satisfaction score, has gone up, right? So we have an efficiency gain, we have a quality gain, and then there's a third thing, which I really think is like the capstone of this example. Lauren, our customer support leader, she and her team led through this change because it did require new ways of working, for sure, like adopting new technology, things of that nature. But they did that so well together. But by the time they had fully deployed these new ways of working across the team, their employee engagement scores on a scale of 100 went up 20 to 30 points on almost every topic. And we feel so strongly about that today at Zapier, when we are circling problems to solve with AI, we actually use, and I'll forward to something here. We actually use this three-part framework for scoping AI opportunities in the company. So when we have a problem, it could be around like, how can we increase like the impact of our recruiting? How can we increase the output of our sales team? How can we increase the product quality and velocity? We're challenging the folks closest to those experiments to set out to find measurable gains in all three of these areas: efficiency, quality, and engagement, meaning employee engagement, like the experience of the people doing the work. And I think this is an example, Pierre, of like, you kind of get what you set out to do. So if we were going back to the customer support example, and Lauren and the team are like, we just want to decrease the average ticket handle time. Okay. Well, I'm confident they would have still done that. Would they have figured out, how to also increase customer satisfaction and employee engagement? Well, I mean, maybe, but if they did, it would have been a happy accident rather than like intentional design. And so this is maybe one of the things personally, like I feel most strongly about with AI is that, like, unlike other tech transformations with AI, I think there really is a play to see some type of measurable improvement in each area of the organization or along all three of these vectors, but only if you set out to improve them from the onset. You got to kind of design or scope it that way.
And do you think that having the people who are actually doing the job, designing the solution, is a big part of this being possible?
Yes. Yeah, like 100%, because they understand what good looks like. They also know the gaps, right? They're the ones who can be very honest. But this is also to our point from earlier around like, well, what does leadership or culture have to do with AI? Well, this is one of the ways, right? If we have an organization culturally where folks are able to say, hey, like the way we do this at the company today, like it's broken. And I know this because I do it firsthand every day. I am a recruiter. I am a salesperson. I am a product manager. Like I can tell you all the, really gnarly stuff about what it's like to do this work at the company. Well, not all organizations have that cultural foundation in place where people can raise their hand and say like, this is ugly, this is ugly, this is ugly, we can make it better. It's really important, right? Because without that, leaders are out of touch with where the biggest opportunities are. And also like leaders often lack the firsthand know-how on exactly where to start using AI to make some type of measurable difference.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting part, because as one of the exciting aspects of AI, I believe, is that you can train the business teams to actually leverage it and build it themselves. So you kind of have this accountability. Well, if there's something broken, you can go and fix it, or you can start building a prototype, yourself. And it removes a bit this tension we had before. We say, okay, this is broken, but I'm not going to fix it, so it's not on me. Do you think that's something that happened that has happened inside of Zapier?
Yes, and in part because that is Zapier's mission, right? That is what Zapier set out to do, and it's the product, and so it's very natural at Zapier. But I say that because it feels very central to Zapier culture, but it's possible for any organization. I mean, the most important thing is that the tools are there. I mean, this is one of the biggest opportunities. Is like there are other tech transformations where, your engineering team gets a bunch of new superpowers, and that's great. With this one, everyone gets new superpowers. Now, it also creates more disorientation at first, because the change affects literally every team, every person in the organization, unlike maybe some of these prior, like tech innovations. But that also means that the benefits are more like broadly accessible, wall to wall. So you get, more upfront pain, but bigger benefit for everybody.
Awesome. So basically, you've laid this. You mentioned this foundation with the guidelines, the hands-on experimentation, the culture of mutual support, and then also all the cultural aspects that the leadership implemented. But I mean, there's a difference between just launching a few initiatives and actually transforming how the entire organization works. How did you think about moving from these initial steps to a real true transformation?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let's look at a couple other things to make this specific. So, to your point, here's an interesting chart. So, over the course of time that we've been talking about, Zapier started tracking adoption. We'll get to transformation, but adoption of AI in daily work. And by the way, as well as measurable benefits, the adoption part can produce measurable benefits in productivity, quality, and employee engagement. But at first, we were just looking to understand, are folks using AI helpfully in their core work in more of that adoptive way? And you can see here the climb all the way up through when we measured this last just a couple of months ago, 97% of folks in the organization using AI in their daily work. That's a good indicator, right? It doesn't, to your point, answer to outcomes and impact, which is where we're going to go next. But it is an important leading indicator. It's an important leading. In other words, it's hard to have that type of like bigger, measurable impact if adoption is poor.
And sorry, Brandon, on that one, how did you measure that?
Two different ways. The chart we're looking at right here is from an employee engagement survey where we just explicitly ask folks, to what degree are you using AI in your daily work? That's like I'd call like a front end, like more like experience, self-reported measure. On the back end, we're also measuring like weekly active users on all the core tools, whether it's like Cursor for the build team or ChatGPT Enterprise for most other teams, Zapier, right? Zapier and AI, kind of AI workflows within Zapier. So we kind of have a front end and a back end metric. And of course, you're looking for like alignment, how much alignment exists between how people self-report or think about their use of AI, and then practically speaking, like what do the actual tools or platforms tell us about usage patterns?
Awesome. Can you tell us also what are the gray and the red lines on the graph? Some folks are asking in the chat.
The green line are folks who answered yes or strong yes to the question, I'm using AI in my daily work. The gray line is like neutral, like I don't know, or like I just started working here, or I don't know if I use it daily, maybe I use it weekly, like so I'm going to answer neutral. Red are folks who say no to that question. You can see here, when we measured this last about 2.5 months ago, the no's are effectively down to like 0 to 1%, and the neutrals are in the 2% range.
Awesome.
So that's one thing. And that is again a measure of adoption. This is a framework that we use to describe the relationship between AI adoption as we understand it and AI transformation. And the simplest way I can think to describe it is that they're both important and they're complementary. And you don't necessarily have to go from like, in Zapier's case, because we started so early, like when I look back on it, it kind of feels like we did a lot of adoption and then started bridging into transformation 12 to 18 months later. These days, based on everything we all now know, as well as how the technology has matured, I actually wouldn't recommend that teams think about it that way from the onset. I would recommend if teams were starting today with a blank sheet of paper in terms of their AI strategy for the team, I would say you want to pull both levers at the same time. You do need individual people and teams to build AI fluency and start applying it in their daily work. When we have seen companies do this, they can see measurable results. They usually measure it in what we call marginals, right? 10% improvement, 15% improvement, so on, in some type of quantifiable metric. And by the way, like if we were to compare that to like prior technologies, like that would be considered like a fairly big deal. And so we don't want to trivialize the measurable business benefits of AI adoption. They are significant, at least in the traditional sense, but it's not transformation. When we think about AI transformation, now we're thinking about kind of reimagining or re-engineering how entire types of work get done at the company, more from the tops down than from the bottoms up. The opportunity of doing that, we think, is measured in multiples, not marginal. So instead of 10%, why not 10x? And then lastly, with these more transformation type opportunities, and the work that Lauren and our customer support team has been doing is more on that transformational side. I mean, the types of results they're producing you would not have expected using prior forms of technology. But importantly, like we talked about earlier, nothing that we talked about with the Zapier customer support team would be possible without great leadership and re-engineering the work, including like the job descriptions of the people doing the work, the retraining of the people doing the work, like thinking about incentives, like to actually get a win at that transformational level. The tooling itself doesn't get the job done. You really want to think about the talent and culture pieces. But when you do that, you can see unusually big gains.
And how do you recommend people who want to embrace that approach get started? Because the transformational part seems like you need to redefine a lot of things in the organization, and that could come in the way of actually starting to adopt the solution.
Yes. Well, exactly. Well, at the end of the day, the other thing too, unless you want an army of consultants to descend on your organization and have them do the transformation for you, you need to develop the muscle internally.
Mm.
And that's part of what you get when you focus on adoption. So, I think you can make progress in parallel on the adoptive and the transformation side, but I don't think you get to do the transformation part, or at least like, be in control of your own destiny, internally without growing the adoptive muscle. And again, that's for a couple of reasons, but one of them, like we talked about earlier, is that oftentimes the folks closest to the work, they know where the opportunities are. And the way we do it on our people team, for example, is as much as we've grown the like median AI fluency level of the folks on my people team, for example, some of the things we're trying to do now on that more transformation end of the spectrum are fairly complex technically to build. And so something really specific that we've done to help with that is I still want my subject matter experts, whether that's my recruiting operations people or my people business partners, I still want them circling the opportunities based on their domain expertise. But I also want to make sure they have dedicated builder support. And so I'll share something in the chat. Let me pull it up right now. We just staffed a role a couple months ago on the people team at Zapier that's new. And we actually have 3 more coming online in other parts of the business. We call it AI automation engineer. We call it AI automation engineer. And this person's job, by the way, this is an internal hire. And I'll explain why we did it internal rather than external. By the way, this is one of those things like AI, like what's going to happen to our jobs. It's like easy to have it's very understandable, honestly, to have like a scarcity mindset. We're looking for upside, right? Where can what we're trying to do with AI actually create new opportunities for our existing team? And this is one super tangible example. So we have an existing member of my team now plays this role, AI automation engineer for HR. And what is her job? Her job, once the folks closest to the pieces of work on my team, recruiting, people, business partnering, HR ticketing, when they circle some of these opportunities and they're like, I kind of know, generally speaking, what we need to do. I'm just not exactly sure how to build it. This AI automation engineer comes alongside and co-builds and tests and deploys the solution with them. In doing so, and we call it a co-build by design, because part of what the AI automation engineer is meant to do is sometimes you say, what's the expression? Teach people how to fish, right? It's a capacity building function. It's not just building things for people, it's building things with people so they can take what they've built with you with their own 2 hands and maintain and improve it over time. So capacity building, builder skills. What are the 3 qualities of a great AI automation engineer? Here's what we've learned. 1, domain expertise. So our AI automation engineer for HR does not have deep expertise in every single area of HR, compensation, talent management. No, but they have worked in HR for many years and they understand, roughly speaking, how the pieces fit together. They certainly have more domain expertise than like someone random we would pull from the outside or a typical solutions architect. So domain expertise is quality number 1. Quality number 2 are the builder skills. They really do understand how to translate an opportunity into like a functioning AI-powered solution. 3, they're great teachers and coaches. And that gets into like, to co-build successfully, knowing how to do it isn't enough. You have to be able to like teach others how to do it too. And that's where we get the capacity building benefit. So again, would not recommend this type of role. You can call it whatever you want, at your company, but this type of role is rocket fuel for translating opportunities with AI into actual solutions. And there are likely people on your teams today who have the skills and probably the motivation to step into a role like this.
And just to clarify, this position and this person, it doesn't have a computer science background. It is not a software developer. It's someone who, I guess, builds automation and has some no-code expertise and develops some engineering mindset, but it doesn't require proper technical training, does it?
It does not require coding. So I think I would say even the definition of technical is getting really interesting, right?
Yeah,
So like
I agree.
I would say that our AI automation engineer is actually quite technical, but they're not a software developer. And interestingly, the other thing the other thing that I think is amazing from a human development point of view with AI, Pete, is that I can't think of another technology that's come along where the best way to teach yourself how to use it is just to ask it to help you teach you how to use it, right? It's like, and so the same is true with the person playing this role on my team today, entirely self-taught, but largely through actually using the tools.
Awesome. And obviously to get there and achieving 97% adoption across the entire team and getting to that structure that you just described, it took you some time and efforts. Have you ever looked back and thought about, okay, what were the successful ingredients of the recipe to make this happen that other people could just take and try to reapply?
Mm-hmm. There are a couple things, and there's one thing I wish we had done sooner. So I'll make sure to cover that too.
Yeah.
The things that the team did, which I think were helpful even from the onset. One is, like, many of our organizations have some type of like growth ritual or framework where, in addition to people having like performance goals, there's usually 1 or 2 things that they're working on from a skills or capacity building point of view. Well, we have that too, but back in that March 2023 Code Red moment, we basically took that over and said everyone in the company is going to have the same growth goal, and it's to find and that it was during that first like couple of months, like one concrete way to use AI to measurably improve your daily work. Like obviously, like, it's great to increase productivity, but kind of like we were talking about here, it's like, yeah, like, yes, like let's find a way to be better at our jobs using AI, but let's hopefully like figure that out in a way that makes the work more interesting for us as humans. Let's make the work suck less. Sometimes is the way we talk about it, right? Like, we don't have to choose between one and the other. Like, let's find a way to use AI to achieve all of these aims together. So that was helpful. By the way, one of the ideas that we're talking about, Pete, is that our companies have a lot of existing practices, rituals, and traditions. Mm-hmm. Wherever we could, we integrated what we were trying to do with AI into those, rather than creating dozens of brand new, unfamiliar rituals and traditions. And we did that for 2 reasons. 1, it's operationally more elegant to do it. 2, it reduces some of the change fatigue or unfamiliarity of the AI opportunity. What we're asking of our teams, it's a lot as it is. And so where we had something in place already that we could adapt, that was already familiar to the team, we took advantage of that. And so, like, repurposing how we thought about these like quarterly growth goals or what have you is one of those examples. Something I wish we had done sooner, though, which some folks may have seen, is we gave a lot of thought to how to scale AI fluency with the existing team. It wasn't until earlier this year, probably like 9 months ago, that we got very opinionated about what we needed to do or to look for in all the people we hired from that point forward. And so what we're looking at here is a synthesis, a summarized version of Zapier's AI fluency framework. And we use this framework to, when we're writing a role and getting it into the market to hire for, we agree with the hiring team on what the fluency floor is for that job. For most jobs at the company today, it is this capable level, which I'll come back to in a minute. For certain roles, I would say certainly like for that, like AI automation engineer would be an example, or AI ML engineers more broadly. Adoptive would be the floor for those roles. Then, importantly, we open source this. So anyone who applies to Zapier knows this framework. We have resources people can use to skill up and there are plenty of others out there that folks can use. But then importantly, now Zapier requires some type of baseline AI fluency for 100% of jobs that we hire into the company. And then in Q1 of this year as well, while we were shipping this, we also rebuilt our new hire onboarding with a much bigger focus on AI fluency and actually Zapier builder skills too, just because we want everyone in the company to be a deep user of our own product. So this is something I wish we had done like a year earlier, maybe 18 months earlier. But the most important thing is we have it now, and it does seem to be quite helpful.
And how did you tackle the question of upskilling everybody? Was it something organic, or did you ask some people of the team? Once you go past the peer support, but actually making sure that everybody reaches the level of literacy that you expect from the different position.
Yes. So here's a provocative part of Zapier's approach related to upskilling. We, even to this day, 2.5 years later, have done effectively no traditional learning and development in support of growing AI fluency. No traditional trainings, no learning management system, click, 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 like none of that. It's been entirely praxis-based. And importantly, when you think about AI fluency, it has been as much the work of helping folks become incredibly articulate about like what problems are worth solving with AI as it is helping them figure out how to solve problems with AI. And you can kind of see that in this AI fluency framework, right? You see this notion of like repeatedly using AI with purpose, adopting purposeful AI usage. And from a talent evaluation point of view, we talked earlier about like integrating the AI opportunity into as many existing practices and frameworks as possible. Here's another example. Like most of our organizations, Zapier has like a core set of expectations for what excellence looks like at the company. We call them impact behaviors. There are really 3 core impact behaviors at the company. The first is all around, are you doing the right work? So before you get into how well are you doing the work, are you doing the right work based on your mission, your job, et cetera? Like, are you being strategic about your priorities, your focus? The second is execution related. It's like, how effectively are you doing the work that matters? So again, number 1, are you doing the work that matters? 2, how well are you doing the work that matters? And the third one is more of that, and are you doing the work that matters well and in a way that is elevating the broader team and company? If you're really good at something, for example, like it's not enough for you to be really good at something. Like you need to be looking for ways to elevate the skillfulness of your peers. So how does this relate to AI upskilling? It relates because over a year ago, we integrated some expectations around how folks think about their job and build with AI into those behaviors. So now it's just part of like everyday coaching conversations, one-on-ones between managers and their directs. It shows up when we're doing our biannual talent evaluations as well.
That's fascinating. How do you measure these different the achievement of these different objectives that you set? Is it always declarative? Do you have other measures? Did you add new ways of measuring that to make sure that you can capture the development of the trend?
We do not like score individuals on their AI fluency as distinct from what I described a moment ago. So we've embedded these kind of like AI behaviors or mindsets, like how do you know a problem that AI can help when you see one? How effectively can you build or co-build solutions using AI to some of those problems into our core impact behaviors? So that's where that shows up most practically. The other thing that we're starting to see, which is kind of interesting, is that like when you come back to some of these, you talk about like a transformation level opportunity within recruiting, for example. Like how could we increase the quota carrying capacity of a recruiter by 3x? Well, improving candidate satisfaction, improving quality of hire, and speeding up how many days it takes to fill a role. That's a big that's a trend AI transformation level question, right? We haven't solved that one yet, but we're really earnestly trying to figure it out. Our talent team, our team of recruiters and sourcers, they kind of ask, like, do we all need to be like highly sophisticated AI builders in order for our team to achieve that transformation? And practically speaking, the answer is no, we don't actually. And coming back to this from earlier, what our talent team, which is again is our recruiting team, what we really need is we do need a couple of like very capable builders on that team, supported by our AI automation engineer. We also need great leadership because again, it's not just about new tools or new AI workflows. It's about rethinking like the role of a recruiter, the ideal profile of a recruiter, sourcer, et cetera, which is really the work of the leadership of our talent team. That's Tracy St. Deek over here at Zapier, as well as our people business partners. This is another place where like some of those like traditional HR muscles, they just got really, well, I guess, yeah, confetti, great. They just got really important again, right? Like you can't do this stuff well without really a lot of thoughtfulness around incentives and talent strategy and so on. Well, what do we then need from the rest of the talent team if they're not required to be building themselves these highly sophisticated workflows? And by the way, it's actually not really efficient, we have seen, to send everyone out like, you reimagine it over here and then you reimagine it. So no, it's the same stuff, right? And a lot of the gains you get is from elevating a standard of how to do something rather than having all of this, like these two people do it one way and then these two people do it a totally different way. Well, what we need from the rest of the team, after you imagine this like golden path has been established, this totally new way of doing recruiting using AI, we need everyone else to adopt it, right? And that's as much a mindset go do as it is a technical go do. Yes, I mean, absolutely. As we saw with our customer support team over a year and a half ago, those new ways of working do require understanding how to use new tools. But practically speaking, and again, I'd love to hear in the chat if some people think about this differently, one of the neat things about AI-powered workflows is they tend to be pretty straightforward and intuitive to use. And so we're not finding the like adopting of the new AI-powered workflows to be quite so steep a curve as other ways we've changed how work got done in the past. And so practically speaking, that's one of the places we're trying to get clear about is like, what is expected from individual people? Do I need to be like the builder, like the re-engineer of the whole thing? Or do you just need me to be super open-minded and just able to like pick up the new way of working once that way of working has been established?
Super interesting. And do you think that the adoption of these new AI tools that are developed, do you think that it's faster than previous technology because of the nature of the technology, or do you think it's because the people who built it are actually people who used to be, the subject matter experts?
I think it's the latter. I mean, what do you think, Pete? Like, I'm sure you've talked with a lot of folks about this too. What do you think?
Yeah, I personally believe that's the best person to build and the best person to make sure that the experience is great for the user is to have the person who was doing the job, because there's no bias, there's no hidden points that he would ignore. So I tend to say so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds right.
Maybe because we have 9 more minutes, and before we leave the floor for some questions. I know that you've published a couple of resources about this journey. Can you point people to where they can learn more, maybe?
Of course. Zapier has been open sourcing entire packs of use cases, ways that Zapier uses AI and automation at Zapier across departments. I'll put in the chat links to these use case catalogs for HR, talent acquisition, finance and accounting, executive operations, like you call it BizOps or executive assistants, executive business partners, and something I think a lot of folks will be interested in as well, go-to-market and revenue operations. So that's coming into the chat right now. There we go.
Awesome.
So and all of these are public links. These are meant to be open sourced. If you see something that's interesting, some of these are also like clickable into actual templates that you can deploy in your own organization. Yeah, they're all live use cases.
Excellent.
Brandon, I don't think the links made it into the chat. It might be a Zoom thing that maybe you got pointed at in sometimes Zoom sends you to messaging an individual person.
Oh, indeed. Hold on. Yes, I see exactly what happened there.
Some person got very, very lucky, but we want
The anticipation. Yeah, someone hit the jackpot. All right, now everyone can have it. How's that look?
Awesome. Yes. One last question, Brandon. For the founders or the HR leaders or business leaders here today, like what's the one thing that you would want them to do differently on Monday morning, based on what you've learned? You know, if they want to get started, what's the best way to get started?
The way this gets real traction is when you ground it in what the company's already trying to do in the world. All of our organizations have missions, we have strategies, and we have goals. You think about like a couple of specific goals, like things that really matter to the company already, where you think AI could make a big difference. Circle those 2 or 3 things. That's thing number one. And the reason that's important is because it requires a lot of focus and resourcing to do something meaningful with AI. And if the way you're pointing the AI like effort, if you're pointing it at anything short of what the company is already most focused on, then it's typically not going to end up getting prioritized despite good intentions. So that's thing number one. And then the thing right behind that is you got to resource it. You got to wall off some resources to go after it. On customer support, for example, that looked like having a couple very small pods of support folks take that Hack Week project that we talked about and go further with it. We didn't ask the whole support team to go do that. Why? Well, because everyone has a business as usual job, right? And this is why transformation is hard, because you're trying to build towards a future that doesn't exist yet, that everyone has a day job and everyone's very busy. And so this is the only way we have found to have success. It's ring fencing entirely new roles like the AI automation engineer that we've talked about. If you don't have somebody's name attached to each of these opportunities in your organization, and they don't have the resources or bandwidth required to make that opportunity real, then again, you'll have good intentions, but you won't see results. So that's the number one thing I would encourage, founders and leadership teams with.
Awesome, Brandon. This has been incredibly valuable. Before we open it to questions from the audience, is there anything we haven't touched on that you think is important for people to understand about AI transformation?
I really appreciated this conversation. The questions were great. Let's take some questions from folks who are with us.
Awesome. Jan, can you pick a few questions from the chat, please?
And yes, let me unmute myself. So first of all, question from earlier, how do you balance speed versus quality versus cost? Are any of these prioritized over the other? And I think this came around the time of when you were saying you were sort of equipping everyone with these tools, and the hackathon and getting everyone to start using this new technology.
Yes. Yeah. That question kind of speaks to this notion of if like J curve, right? So it's like new technology, new opportunity. Like if this is our current state and we're trying to achieve like these amazing results up here, it's not a line from here to here, right? You have the J curve, which means there's a period where you've made a bunch of upfront investments in talent and tooling. And so like your ROI equation in the near term goes down before it starts going back up, because you made all these investments and it takes time to see results. And so some of it's like a point of leadership conviction. Like we did not believe that we could scale the team's AI fluency and start making progress in some of these opportunities with AI if every single person in the company didn't have access to at least core tooling. And our those 2 tools were like an enterprise grade LLM and some type of builder platform, which of course at Zapier is going to be Zapier. So yeah, I mean, no regrets on those investments. Nowadays, when we're leveling up those investments or bringing in new tooling, we use a more like experimentation framework. So it's like, what business metric are we trying to improve and why? Why is this investment, whether it's in talent or in tools, often both, the like right resource level to try to get a real win with that experiment? How long do we think the experiment will take? How will we know if it's working? And then what's the checkpoint? And then for every one of these things, public Slack channel, public to the company. It is like transparent, right? Open Slack channel in the company where anyone who wants to follow along with that experiment can do so.
Yeah, and do you have another question from the chat?
Yes. So we also have One question also from earlier, did any people leave the company because of this AI transformation?
We had 1 to 2 people leave over the last 2.5 years out of like, and that was used pretty early on, is like 20, I think those were both in 2023. It was around the environmental impact of AI. Just
Yeah.
like there's like, oh gosh, and by the way, which I have a lot of like empathy for and concern about. But I think what we've said at Zapier is this is more a matter of like how we use it rather than whether we are going to use it. Like if we are going to do the thing that we need to be doing in the world and make automation accessible for everyone, we cannot be on the sidelines.
Yeah, makes sense. And a couple, like two separate questions, but they sort of tie into one. So Jason just asked, are there any guidelines you create in terms of what teams are not allowed to use AI for in their jobs at Zapier? And then there was another question from earlier with, are you finding any restrictions from any compliance framework? So there they mentioned ISO 42001, which I have no idea what that means, but maybe you do. But are you finding any restrictions on your ability to use AI in HR based on those sort of frameworks?
They're emerging. I expect we will. I expect we will. I mean, in Europe, for example, we're tracking. We actually have a set of agents set up that like basically does research for us and does a summary every single week so that we stay on top of this. We're a global team. We have folks in 42 countries, including all over Europe, and so whether it's in Europe or even in my state that I live in now in California, in the U.S., there's emerging uh, regulation around this, and so we'll always abide by that. I think we're going to find, like with data privacy regulations of 10 and 15 years ago, that once we really get our heads around it, there are still ways we can have a lot of impact while still being compliant.
Perfect. And maybe then we can end on this question because this is one that is that always comes up, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on it to close it out. Do you use or how do you use agentic AI in your organization, not just AI workflows?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm going to define agentic AI as AI that makes its own decisions about how to achieve a task. And that is a frontier right now. You'll see agents and agentic AI all over everything these days. There are very few live, like true live, like HR applications of agentic AI today, including at Zapier, for what it's worth. We use Zapier agents, for example, in a couple of places where it will actually choose like tools and steps rather than having to be told exactly what to do. We use that to personalize correspondence for recruiting with candidates, would be one example. But those things, I think, again, like very much the frontier. Not everything, I'm seeing a lot of nods on the screen. Not everything that people call agents are agents in the sense that we're thinking about it.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, Sam, thank you so much for being available for us today. Super, lot of valuable learnings. If people want to follow you, what's the best place to keep in touch with, what you're doing, and when you're sharing the journey, what's the best way for them to follow you?
The best way is LinkedIn, and I'll put my handle in the chat right now. There we go.
Awesome. Brandon, thanks again for being here. Wishing everybody a good day, and let's do it again soon and check in on the evolution in the upcoming months or years.
Yeah, I'd like that. We're having fun over here. Thanks, Peeves. Thank you.